Hey, you, wherever you're listening from, welcome to Let's Talk Common Sense with me, Mike Omni. I don't know what to say. It feels like I said in the last episode, and apologies if you weren't here. We didn't record last week because we were right in the midst of actually the lockdown announcements and things of that nature. And in fact, we've had to suspend pretty much all of recording for Let's Talk Common Sense. We had some great guests lined up and, it's all been postponed. So as soon as we're back, we can go back in the office, things will be okay. I am recording this podcast from my kitchen. So I'm very sorry if, things don't sound as prim and proper as they should. It has been very, very difficult. The whole team, everyone's back in their houses and people are all on lockdown. So it's very hard to get stuff out. But, I managed to salvage some equipment. So here we go. I think I can still get out the podcast and hopefully keep you up to date with what's happening. There is so much information out there, and that's the first thing I want to address. There's just so much out there that it's so hard to know what to listen to, what to believe, what not to believe. Everyone's kind of just trusting the BBC at this stage. But of course, they're a news outlet. And whilst they don't have the profit motive, that like other news outlets, they like clicks and they like people going on their site. So they've been feeding into our anxiety, recording every single death, recording people as numbers and not as what's, their names or their stories. We understand why, but it's just a really anxious time to be alive. So, welcome to this wonderful podcast. What I'm going to try and do isn't so much give you lots of information about what's happening. There's no point doing that. You can do that online for free. But to try and answer a couple of other questions that it's interesting to think about, to try and give you some kind of public health announcements as such, but also to see just what's happening in this crazy time. One of the things we've also been discussing, me and the team, is, what would a podcast contain at a time like this? I mean, do you really want me to spend the next 30 minutes telling you how bad things are? Well, that would be a waste of your time. Do you want me to just tell you how to keep safe? That would be helpful, but again, you can find that online. So what I thought I would do is go through some headlines, which are important, and it's important we kind of know about them, but then try and answer this next question, which I think everyone is thinking about. And that question is simple. When are we going to be done with all of this? When's this going to be done? The whole lockdown was fun for a week. We're all posting pictures and doing challenges. And I think now everyone's going, okay, that was fun, but can we go back to normal? Can I go back to work? Can I find somewhere to put my kids that are bothering the life out of me? Just yesterday, the announcement came out. The chief medical officer in an interview said that the lockdown may last till June, and I think collectively we all dropped our forks and spoons and our mouths equally dropped at the thought of being in the house till June. That just seems improbable. A part of me thinks that's almost certainly not going to happen. The caveat was they said it depended on how the public were responding to the lockdown rules. So please, whoever you are, just stay at home, okay? Stay at home, save lives, and make this period as short as possible. Like many of you, I have holidays planned. I've got mission trips abroad planned, which are almost certainly not going to happen. And at the TCS Network, we've got a string of events planned. Oh gosh, I forgot I haven't done the introduction. Okay, this is Let's Talk Common Sense, the podcast that brings you up to speed with what's happening in the world and gives you a chance to meet interesting people, brought to you by the TCS Network, a news network that creates online and offline spaces to bring people together who disagree to learn from each other. Right, that's done. But back to these people who need to stay at home to ensure that we can actually leave. The Mirror reported 3 days ago that a group of 20 men were found playing football in London outside and the police sent them home. I hope they got fined. It's ridiculous. I saw the pictures. There was 20 people on a pitch just playing football, like an actual game. They were wearing shin pads. I'm thinking, folks, we're on lockdown. You can't just go play football. We're on lockdown. So this really shocked me, but we need people to stay at home so this thing can be over as quick as possible. So that's what's coming up in this podcast. Let's get straight into it. Now, the first story I want to report to you came from the Times. I was really confused as to why they put the story out, but what the heck? It's interesting. And the story is that the police will start ignoring some crimes because officers, one, are falling victim to coronavirus, but also the police, who historically are always stretched, are reaching their capacity. They're reaching breaking point. So the police will essentially cut services, drop investigations, and scale back their responses to crime because the police force is reaching tipping point in the middle of the coronavirus. Bear in mind, we haven't actually reached the peak for the virus yet. So we're still going up the curve, which means more people will be infected. We're still going to see a massive spike in numbers before we start coming down. And already the police are struggling. Now, a graduated withdrawal of service plan, which was seen by the Times, details how officers are going to be redeployed to critical activities such as 999 calls or serious crimes because, again, they're very, very stretched. So what they're reporting is that the coronavirus is going to interrupt their ordinary services, which means stuff like theft, burglary, low-level crimes like cannabis dealing. That just they're not gonna be able to enforce that or to work around that at all. Which I guess is good if you're a dealer, but I mean, who's going out to get weed anyways in this time? But it's interesting because I thought to myself, well, what's reporting this do? Does it mean people are more likely to go, oh, the police aren't about, let me do some crime? I don't know, but it's interesting that, and I think it's interesting just the scale of it. So the withdrawal plan that the Times saw apparently applies to 43 forces in England and Wales, and all of them are said to be reaching the tipping points. Some are in red zone, which is the one just before the worst zone, which is, I think, the black zone, and what's going to happen is crucial activities just won't work. What's also interesting, I remember, I think the Mirror reported this, that some of the rules in the lockdown were that you are not to be outside in public with more than one person, which obviously those lads playing football broke. But then also you are only allowed out once a day for exercise. And in the most British thing ever, I think it was the Times that reported, the Mirror that reported it. Because what happened after that announcement came forth, and so it was BBC that reported it, the police were inundated with people calling to report their neighbors that were going for 2 runs a day. Now, it's so British because I want to say it's a joke, but it's also interesting that that's what people are finding time to do, to report their neighbors for going on more than 1 run. But there you go. That was just quite funny to me. Now, the other news concerns, or the other breaking news rather, concerns sport. Now, one of the major things that's making us really sad is, suppose we were on lockdown, but we could watch the Premier League and watch major sports fixtures. That would be okay. But as you know, the Premier League suspended their season to kind of think about what they would do as a response to coronavirus. Now, what's come out is that the Premier League are discussing isolated camps for hosting the remaining games from this 2019-2020 season. So they've developed plans for clubs to play televised games in a kind of World Cup style camps in the Midlands and in London, and this will be over June and July, and they're doing this just so they can finish the 2019-2020 season. So the football authorities have been in discussion about ideas like, having games behind closed doors, maybe having a couple of people watching, having isolated camps, where clubs can keep on returning to and stuff like this. But there's just massive pressure because this would be a massive TV event, and so you need more staff to be able to kind of complete it. So in some sort of way, it still would cause, or still could cause, problems for folks who are working during this period. It's just so sad what's happening to sport and just events. I mean, I said in the last podcast, this is 2 podcasts ago, it's just, if you run an event company, it is not a fun time to be alive because events are just cancelled. They're just cancelled, and there's no way you could kind of even operate at half capacity because you just can't have events. Now, one thing I have been thinking is, at some stage we have to be let out the house. I mean, think about it. economic life in the UK would crumble if till June we could not leave our house to go to work. Now, some people are still working, of course, key workers and so on and so forth. But apart from that, the idea that, and bear in mind, people are like, oh, it's the whole world. No, it's only just shy of 60 countries where cases have been confirmed. And you've got about 190 something countries in the world. So lots of countries are still, trading, doing their thing, growing. Whereas we are, everyone agrees now that we're going to have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, which means we almost definitely will be in recession. And so a part of me thinks surely that factors into Boris's plan. In case you missed it, Boris Johnson has coronavirus as well, as does Matthew Hancock, who is the health secretary. I think the chief, there's always 2 people next to Boris Johnson giving announcements. One's the chief medical officer. I forgot the other person, might be the head of the CBI or something, but I know one of them has it as well, so it's really sad. But anyways, it's affecting sport, it's affecting the police, it's affecting pretty much every business, everyone who's self-employed. I should probably at this stage give you some public health warnings. So, how do you know if you have coronavirus? Well, there's 2 symptoms you need to be aware of. And I'm only doing this because a lot of people don't know. And it's shocking because, everyone's, if you're young, and then let's face it, the majority of our audience are young. You listening to this are probably young. They're like, I'll be fine. It's just, I'll be okay. But then the problem is, if you infect somebody and then they infect somebody and then they infect somebody, it might actually lead to somebody who doesn't have the immune system dying by virtue of being infected. So you can't do the whole, I'm okay, because what makes this so bad is whilst it's 10 times the mortality of the flu or common or kind of influenza, is you can also carry it and be and not have any symptoms. And as such, a lot of carriers don't know. But here are some symptoms. 2 big ones. One is a high temperature. Do not leave your house if you have a high temperature. This means if you feel hot to touch on your chest or on your back. You don't need to measure your temperature to find out the number. If it feels hot to touch your chest or your back, you have a high temperature and you need to stay at home. If you have a new or a continuous cough, then just stop. Right, and this means coughing a lot more than an hour or 3 or more coughing episodes in 24 hours. This is another reason to stay at home. To protect other people, the NHS are advising that you do not go to GP or surgery or pharmacy. You stay at home. Stay at home, self-isolated. That's the best thing to do. Now, folks, now some of you are already thinking, this is so boring, man. This is so boring. I just can't wait to have my life back. I just want my life back. Well, I've got some news for you. And this question of when will things go back to normal has been, in discussion. I saw trending just yesterday on Twitter, when coronavirus is over, and people are very optimistic, thinking it's a couple of weeks away. Well, the BBC did a good kind of deep dive into when, the coronavirus will end, looking at a couple of exit strategies. You remember Boris Johnson saying at some stage that, we can turn the tide and send coronavirus packing. These are direct quotes. He says we can send coronavirus packing in the next 12 weeks. That sounds good, but again, what we've just heard, it may be June, and some experts are even saying October till things are better. So what are some of the options we have? Well, there's vaccines, and I think people are putting their bets on vaccines. In fact, just last week, we saw the first clinical trials begin in America, the first human clinical trials, where folks have bravely volunteered themselves to be tested. And the idea is that, if we can bypass the animal testing and just go straight there, and, we really put a lot of money into tests. And even in the UK, research is going on at an unprecedented rate right now. If we can get a vaccine, then essentially that would help people, because if you can immunize enough people, about 60% of the population, then the virus can no longer cause outbreaks, and this is something known as herd immunity. Now, the best guess is that vaccines could still, and even Bill Gates was talking about this on CNN just 4 days ago. The best guess is that vaccines could still be about 12 to 18 months away if everything goes smoothly. Note that that's if everything goes smoothly. That's That's a long time to wait when facing unprecedented social restrictions and just just a lifestyle that we all doesn't seem like we can maintain. So what Professor Woolhouse told the BBC was that waiting for a vaccine should not be honored with a name strategy, because it's not a strategy. And it's true. If you're hoping that one day someone's going to be like, we found a cure, and that's going to be how everything changes, you are kidding yourself. That's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Not gonna happen. But let's let's move away from that and speak about natural immunity. Now, this is something else that's been floated: natural immunity. Now, this sounds really good, but again, natural immunity is at least 2 years away. The UK's short-term strategy is to drive down cases as much as possible to prevent hospitals being overwhelmed, because as you know, when you run out of intensive care beds, then that's when you see the death really spike. Once cases can be suppressed, it may allow some measures to be lifted for a while, and until the cases rise, and we may need another round of restrictions. But when this might be is really, really uncertain. I remember the UK's chief scientific advisor, Patrick Vallance, he says putting an absolute timelines on things like this is impossible. So the simple answer to the question, when will things get back to normal, is we do not know. And I think what I want to do with this podcast is at least help some of us who think this is going to be a quick thing, I can move on to get back to my normal life. That's almost certainly not what's going to happen. This will be with us for at least a year, and we'll have to think about how we do community, how we do business. All these things will be affected by the coronavirus, and we should accept that this may be the new normal, and we don't know all the sacrifices we're going to have to make. But assuming it's going to be quick and things are going to move on, that's just not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. So get used to this, essentially, and get ready to make all the necessary changes you have to make. Now, I'm trying to work out what I should do. Should I give you more public service announcements, or should I leave it there? Well, what I really want to do is get you engaged with the Commentators Network, because what we've done is we understand that you're at home, and so we're creating more content. We've got a YouTube channel, it's the Commentators Network, and you can watch interviews, watch shows. We're going to be putting out a lot more content that will hopefully help you keep sane during this period. We know it's a busy period. And we know it's a tough period, so we want to help you stay up to date. So I want to encourage you to share this podcast if you can. If you enjoy it, if you think it's helpful to you, share it. But also subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, just whatever social media you use, LinkedIn, whatever it is. And we're going to try and keep you updated, but also keep you informed and keep asking you interesting questions that hopefully will help you get through this period, in a good way, learning more, knowing more, but also expanding what you believe and what you know. Our aim here is to help you interact with thoughts, ideas, things that you may not know necessarily, but also agree with. So thank you for listening as ever. Thank you for being patient with us as we deal with this, deal with what seems like a really unprecedented time. Do subscribe to this podcast if you haven't. Like it, share it. The hashtag, should you want to say anything about the podcast online, is LTCS. And if you tweet with that hashtag, or you put it on Instagram, whatever it is, we will respond to you. We will, and you believe that. But thank you so much for listening, and we will see you hopefully next week with a special guest. Take care, stay safe, and wash your hands.